Welcome back. This is part 2. Now that we have the subframe finished, let's get on to the body parts. Now that our subframe is complete, you'll need to get a small protractor so we can set the angles on the next step. Here's a PDF of the butt section. Notice the tabs on there. Reinforce those tabs with blend arm tape. And I'm going to do the folds by scoring with a small Phillips screwdriver and a straight edge. The notches are very obvious. You'll know exactly where to score the lines. It's very straightforward.
Really fast. Okay. Now negative bends.
And watch on the PDFs, you'll see some places where it says a negative angle. That means you'll score it on the other side and fold it the opposite direction. Actually, in this video, I should have scored it one line below, but if you score it on the wrong side, you can always go back to the other side and do it again. I found it easiest just to fold it over the edge of the countertop. Don't overdo it, it'll crack the foam. You can put tape on there also before you bend it to keep it from cracking. If you do crack it, just wipe a little hot glue on it.
You want to do those again? So, show them over here.
Always remember too, when you're working with the 3mm foam, you want a hot glue gun that has a low setting. If you use a hot setting, you'll melt right through the foam. So make sure you have a gun that has a low setting, or a gun that's not a hot gun. So here I set the pieces in just to kind of show you where they go. This is the butt piece in front. One thing I tried doing was actually cutting some angles of foam that were preset at the angles and hot gluing. This works okay, but the triangles end up having to come off when you glue it down, so probably it's better just to use a protractor and hold it in place for a few seconds. Here you can also see I set the next piece in place. That's the calf piece, so we'll go after the butt piece, just to give you an idea where that goes.
Get me here. Tell me when you're ready. Yeah, good. Crease.
So I went ahead and scored that piece also. And you don't need a lot of pressure when you're scoring this, just to drag your screwdriver across the foam, and that's all you need. Like I keep saying too, it's a good idea to refer back and forth to the pictures he has on Flickr. There are descriptions underneath some of the pictures to help you build it. The PDFs also have just tons of information on them, so always look at those as you're doing a step. One thing I found out too, when you're doing the angles, even if you're off a little bit, because of where the pieces get glued on, most of the angles will work out okay even if you're off a few degrees, so don't worry too much about that. Try to get them close, but it's not going to be critical.
Yeah.
Another thing is you're putting these together too, where you have glue joints on the pieces that you're folding. You're going to want to sand the inside edges to a bevel so that when they fit together they make a nice seam. If you just leave them without sanding, you're going to have a raised area there. You can sand it later, but it's a nicer build if you pre-sand that.
Go. Yep.
So what I found works good, I've been putting hot glue in the joint and then just taking a piece of foam scrap and wiping it. And then you get a rather quickly, but that seems to work pretty well. You can go back after that with a heat gun if you want, keep it on a low setting and heat form the piece also. But basically, if you hold the angle gauge against it for like 30 seconds, it'll hold the angle pretty good for you. Like I said before, if you're off a little bit, it seems like it comes together pretty well, even if you're off a couple degrees. Here's the pieces actually put onto the plane. You can see that's the butt piece in front and then the calf piece behind it. And it might look like pieces don't fit, but when you bend them down, they're going to butt up nicely. Did a great job getting the angles right. I use a lot of tape on the seams. What I've been doing is using foam tack on the edges, and then you'll see that there's tabs that go in there. When you have a tab like that, I'll hot glue the tabs down, and then I'll put tape on the face of it to keep the seams flat. Next step is the belly piece. And you'll see where it butts right there to the butt piece. And that gets actually just put on flat like that. So there's a right and left piece for the belly. And where there's an actual seam, I always put a tab there. You can see that in the photo. There's this piece of scrap there for a tab for the butt joints. These are the shin pieces that go just behind the calf piece. You'll see that. Butts right on the... There's a little tab, and the tab actually fits on the subframe. So you see a tab about where my fingers are there, and it actually gets glued to the subframe. Here you can see the belly is just a butt joint on the butt piece there. This is a shin piece. And notice the tabs on the pieces. You're going to need to make scrap tabs that these pieces get glued to. It'll give you a better seam there. And that way when you go to sand too, if you're off a little bit, you've still got a backer on there so it'll sand okay, and you just fill it with some putty. So that's the legs on it, the belly piece on. It's starting to look like a wingsuit. Notice the motor slot there. That's, as you're putting the pieces on, that's actually marked for you by Greg. So there's, you want to orientate the butt pieces so that slot shows. But you cut that off at the end, according to the PDFs. Some shots of it from front and back. So there you go. That's pretty much the lower body's done. Next we'll work on the chest. A few shots of it going together. A few more photos showing what we just built, just to give you an idea in case you couldn't visualize it. But notice that motor slot there. That's important that we know where that's at. Here again, I'm showing you how I tape the seams. And you want to use backer tabs on them wherever you can. And find a place where you can really get around it, because it's a big airplane. You're going to need lots of room. I decided just to do it on a kitchen counter here. So, and here again, you can see the tabs. You have to glue in that scrap material to make the tabs. This is the last piece for the shins. So I'll end the video here. So stay tuned for part 3. We'll get through the rest of the chest and the arms, and we'll go from there. Stay tuned for part 3. Hope you're enjoying the build. It's going together nicely. Thanks, Greg.